Hello and welcome to the Intentional Brief, your weekly video update for the one big thing in cybersecurity news for middle market companies, their investors, and management teams. I'm your host, Shay Colson, managing partner at Intentional Cybersecurity, and you can find us online at intentionalcyber.com. Today is Monday, August 25th, 2025, and we're going to shift gears a bit on today's show and not talk about ransomware crews, although perhaps ironically and perhaps not, we are going to talk about your data being taken and used to deliver value to others, so draw the parallels that you will. In particular, I'm talking about an interesting discussion that's surfaced in the past week around ZeroTrust Network, or ZTNA, network architecture provider Zscaler, who, according to both a recent panel appearance at a Cloud Security Alliance event and an earnings call transcript that has been resurfaced from 2024, Zscaler apparently has been taking the logs their customers generate via deep packet inspection and using this data to train their AI systems, and not just a little bit, but a lot, to the tune of, reportedly from the CEO of Zscaler, 3 trillion logs from customers every week. As a primer for those who may not live in this world, deep packet inspection is a deployment architecture that breaks the encryption on SSL TLS connections from the client to the server, essentially by sitting as a proxy in the middle between the two, breaking the connection, inspecting the packets, again, deep packet inspection, and then re-encrypting from the other side onto the server. So traditionally, this can offer some benefit in terms of visibility because, again, encrypted connections are hard to see what's going back and forth, but it also slows and complicates things, breaks connections, and now SSL, of course, is enforcing those things that make this operationally sort of a challenge. But again, because this technology has a significant visibility into web traffic, these logs often contain highly sensitive details that appear both in the URL or that go across in these connections. Regardless, the earnings call included this quote, which says that, quote, "These are complete logs that have structured and unstructured data, including the full URL. We leverage this proprietary data to train AI models that power innovations throughout our platform." So it's not as if Zscaler is downplaying their awareness of this risk or this data. And additionally, I think for a lot of operational teams, these connections are going out over TLS, right? Transport layer security, which is, again, in theory, end-to-end encrypted. And many teams assume that encryption means protection. But that's reasonable, I think, in normal deployments. But when you have deep packet inspection, maybe not so much. So short of not using that deep packet inspection capability or not using Zscaler or a ZTNA provider in general, there's really no way for you to know what the life is of that data once it leaves your encrypted connection and is broken in the middle. Downstream, who knows what this exposure can look like, because we don't certainly see how Zscaler brings it to life. I think we're actually going to see more and more instances like this where AI is going to create these unintentional exposure capabilities, instances, incidents, etc., at least from a data leakage perspective. And it won't always look so obvious as employees uploading things into ChatGPT or traditional products shimming in AI into their interfaces left and right. So we need to be mindful of those, of course, but these sort of things from our trusted partners, which is, kind of ironic in this zero trust deployment. There is a tremendous amount of trust we're putting in those providers, whether it's Zscaler or any of the others, because these things do create exposure and can create risk. Early this morning, Zscaler posted a response to this ongoing conversation, attempting to clarify how they've trained their AI on customer data. And particularly, they use a water analogy that I think to me falls a little bit flat, but they note, quote, "We only use data or metadata that does not contain customer or personal data for AI model training." Quote, "Within that contained environment, customers can harness the power of their own data. Logs, transactions, and telemetry generated by their use of our platform are used to improve outcomes for their organization alone. This means customers benefit directly from their own signals, whether it's for risk modeling, AI copilots, or policy enforcement, without having to trade away autonomy or privacy or security." They close the article with this, quote, "To reemphasize, customers' proprietary information or personal data in the Zscaler logs is never shared outside of the customer boundary," unquote. So to me, I'm still not convinced that they're truly not using your data, but instead I think they are using it with the thought that since you benefit from it, you'll be okay with that. And maybe you will, maybe you won't, but maybe you didn't even know. And so I think a solid AI policy for your organization paired with tight coordination on the business side with those stakeholders and with your third parties in terms of asking questions, understanding how the data lives, being very clear about what they're doing with your data, including asking them about training AI models and other things, in addition to your own network logs and maybe a skeptical eye towards those who want to be close or want to have access to your data, can really help both raise awareness around this issue and ultimately manage down that risk. From a fundraising perspective, we saw only $5.3 billion in newly committed capital last week, which is one of the lower numbers we've seen up to this point for both the quarter and the year. That said, there are a few cyber IPOs in the pipeline, including SASE provider Netskope, who is reporting a 30.7% jump in revenue in the first half of fiscal 2026. They're looking to raise $500 million on a $5 billion valuation with the IPO, but also posted a net loss of $169.5 million on revenue of $328.5 in the 6 months ending July 31st, which is still a loss, but less of a loss than last year. So again, profitability and value are not necessarily correlated. We will be watching, I think, quite intently both how that IPO goes and how things come together in Q4 once folks are back from the office in September after the Labor Day holiday next week. As a reminder, you can find all the links we talked to about the articles in the comment section below. You can find back issues and written transcripts of these videos at intentionalcyber.com, and we will see you next week for another edition of the Intentional Brief.